Happy New Year. Okay, well, New Year was 2 weeks ago, but better late than never. Just like adult students going back to get their high school diploma here at the Excel Center where I work, which is actually what we're going to be talking about today, but not the Excel Center. We're going to be talking about special ed services such as IEPs and 504s and how those relate to adult education. So, without further ado, let's dive right in. Today's lesson, IEPs and 504s in adult ed. So before we can talk about special education in adult ed, first we have to identify what adult ed is. Adult ed can be a number of things, not just going back for your high school diploma. It can also be adults going back to college to earn their associates or their bachelor's, or maybe even taking night school to get a certification for a particular program or job. Do adults have IEPs and 504s? Yes, they do. IEPs will follow you until the age of 22, at which point they transition into a 504. Now, I've talked about the differences between an IEP and a 504, and if you're interested in watching that video again, or if you missed that video, feel free to click on the link in the description to this video. Now, do IEPs and 504s look different in adult ed? Actually, no. The setup of IEPs and 504s are the same as in a traditional K through 12 school. However, the level of responsibility on the student's part is different. So, for example, in a traditional school, K through 12, students aren't necessarily required to advocate for themselves. And the reason why is because a lot of students don't know how to advocate. So it's the responsibility of the special ed teacher to ensure that the students are getting the services that they require. And parents are actively engaged because a lot of students that are in K through 12, almost all of them, are under the age of 18. And as a result, they have a legal guardian that's in charge of all of their legal and educational requirements, such as IEPs and 504s. Now, for adult ed, it's slightly different. Students are expected to advocate for themselves. The reason why? Well, because they're adults. Now, I do have some students that do require additional support. And even though they may be afraid to ask for it or don't quite know how to advocate for themselves, whenever I do see that they are struggling, I'll be proactive and work with those students one-on-one. But generally, the advice of special ed in adult ed is that students advocate for themselves because they know what they can do and what they can't do. All we have to do is make sure that they are getting the supports and services that they require. Any additional support and services is up to them to make sure that they advocate. And parents aren't actively engaged. And the reason why is because these are adults. Now, here at the Excel Center, we do have some students that are 17-year-olds where I do work with parents, or I have had some students that aren't mentally capable of handling the educational responsibilities. So the court has an appointed guardian that handles those IEPs and 504s, but those situations are rare. Are the services different? Actually, no. The services in adult ed are the same as in a traditional school setting. However, the types of services and supports, like a traditional setting, depends on the school. So, for example, if a student requires speech and language services and the school has an SLP, a speech and language pathologist, on staff, then there's no extra work for the school to do. However, if a school does not have a SLP on staff, then the school is required to find a way to provide this service to the student because whatever's written in the IEP is what the school has to follow. And that's it. That's special ed in the adult setting. Now, some schools vary in the amount of special ed students that are enrolled. For example, here, I started the year out with 14 students. Now I'm down to like 4, but I do have about 12 504 students. Whereas in other parts of the network, some other Excel centers have 20 or 30 IEP students on a caseload. So again, it varies between school and school, but the services and the supports are pretty much the same. Now, if you liked what you saw, you learned something new, or you're new to the channel, please click that like button. And if you want updates on future videos, feel free to click the subscribe button and ring the bell for updates on future videos. Now, adult ed and special ed services, even though they're very similar to a traditional school setting, they are slightly different when you get into college. And what are those differences? Well, that's a video for another time. But if you have a particular topic in special ed that you would like me to talk about, drop a line in the comments section and I'd be happy to go over it. And until next time, class dismissed.